Hey guys, hope you're having a wonderful day today. My name is Steve. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to, is this the world's hardest exam? Based off of the description, I believe this exam is from All Souls College at Oxford University. Beyond that, I have no idea what to expect here, but I came across this video and I thought it would be interesting to kind of see what an exam looks like at a college at Oxford University. Basically, I understand that Oxford University and the colleges within the Oxford University system are very prestigious. They're hard to get into. And I'm just curious, what does an exam look like at one of these colleges? You know, is this truly the world's hardest exam? I have no idea, but hopefully we will hear what some of the questions are here and be able to determine for ourselves if we feel like this is the world's hardest exam. But enough rambling from me, guys. Let's go ahead and dive in and check out, is this the world's hardest exam?
Can a robot have a gender? Defend the indefensible? And simply the word water. These are all past questions from what is often called the hardest exam in the world.
Ooh, those are interesting.
Truly we know that for each of us, the hardest exam in the world is the one we haven't studied for, but this exam does seem pretty fascinating. It is the University of Oxford All Souls College Examination Fellowship. All Souls is a college at Oxford.
Beautiful.
And it's very exclusive. If you pass this exam, you get an all-expenses-paid fellowship to live there for 7 years and focus on your graduate studies and academic work. The website says that you get
7 years, all expenses paid. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a big deal. No wonder it's going to be a hard exam. You know, they got to make this very exclusive, to say the least.
7 years in ideal research conditions,
wow,
in regular contact with leading scholars in your field, and free from the many pressures, financial or otherwise, that can afflict graduate students.
That's awesome.
In 7 years, you might be able to complete a doctorate, turn it into a book, and then move on to a new project. Now, doesn't that sound nice? But every year, only 1 or 2 students pass this exam, so perhaps don't get your expectations up too high. It's a hard exam because there are no right or wrong answers, and the questions are somewhat abstract, which makes it the kind of thing that's difficult to study for. The exam consists of writing 12 essays over 4 papers, taken over 2 days. There are 2 general papers, and then you get a choice from law, history, philosophy, politics, economics, English literature, and classics. It's not really one for the scientists, but let's have a look at some of the past questions.
Wow, that's interesting. So I'm curious, since there are no right or wrong answers, who is determining if your answer is the best answer? Who is determining, out of all the students that take this exam, who basically gets that fellowship? I would love to know, is it like a group of people, or is it one individual? It's got to be a group of people that are determining who, you know, they're basically all kind of grading this exam, so to speak, and deciding who had the best answers and whatnot.
Let's take a look at the general paper. Is there something to be said for boredom? Should historical fiction keep to the facts?
Whoa, hold on. Should historical fiction keep to the facts? Well, I mean, generally speaking, historical fiction is somewhat based off facts. If you're writing a piece of historical fiction, you're basing it somewhat off of historical facts, right? I don't know.
And are some languages more beautiful than others?
Yes. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's just true. I mean, when you listen to different languages around the world, personally, now beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or in this case, in the ear of the beholder. But let's be honest, if you listen to different languages, some languages do sound absolutely beautiful, and some languages are like, not so beautiful. I mean, let's just be honest with that. I mean, I'm not going to call out any languages. I'm just saying, in general, there are going to be some languages that sound better to the ear than others. It's that simple. Is online learning real learning? Absolutely. Does a religion have to be old? I mean, no. I mean, people can create their own religions at any time. Now, I mean, yeah, I would say a religion doesn't have to be old.
There are a lot of past questions to go through, but I'll point out some of the ones that I found the most fascinating or that really made me think. Number 8, does guilt promote creativity? In number 10, we see a quote from Daniel Kahneman. What would I eliminate if I had a magic wand? Overconfidence.
I have that book. That's a good book if you've never read it. Oh, these are questions that, is there a time limit when they're taking this quiz? Like, how long do they have to answer these questions? Because these are questions that I would have to spend an extended amount of time really contemplating to truly be able to give my best answer. You know, the few that I've answered here probably aren't the ultimate answers I would give if I was truly taking this exam, because I would want to, you know, think a little bit more on them. But these are fascinating. I love this. I love this type of quiz, man. I love this type of thing that just gets you thinking deeper. You know what I mean?
Discuss. A lot of the questions, though, go towards being a lot more controversial or even political. There are questions in here about vaccine passports and the gig economy, probably issues that are topical and being discussed.
Yeah, those are more modern, huh?
Around the time that the exam is taking place. We've got, should genetic enhancement of intelligence be explored? And defend the indefensible. Some questions then would be easier to study for.
Defend the indefensible.
Those ones about current issues, it would certainly help to be on top of what's being printed in newspapers and online journalism, things like that. But some of these more theoretical or abstract questions, perhaps
That's a very interesting one to me. Will eating animals be condemned by future generations? I don't think so. I really don't. I think, I mean, we've been eating animals for forever. I mean, I don't think just because we can get by without eating animals that all of a sudden it's going to be condemned. It's not something that's just going to disappear because we have the technology to do otherwise. Except maybe one day if we all lived, you know, in some sort of biodome fake atmosphere, we would have to do something like that. But outside of that, very long-term future possibility, I can't see that just changing if life went on as it is today, basically.
You just have to hope that it's something you've thought about before. And perhaps that's an appropriate strategy, to pick questions that you have already thought about. Because some of them, for example, number 29, are cryptocurrencies the future? It's plausible you will have seen already a bunch of YouTube videos about that or otherwise. But questions like 22, can a robot have a gender? Did make me stop and think about something that I hadn't really thought too much about before. The exam is designed to find really smart people, and I guess one kind of smart person does already in their daily life talk about and think about a lot of these questions. Should any new science be published behind paywalls? Or how can policy combat algorithmic discrimination? Being the kind of engaged member of society that enjoys...
Number 9, absolutely not. In fact, lobbyists shouldn't exist, period. I think lobbying should be completely outlawed. You know, you shouldn't be able to come and pay a politician a bunch of money to vote a certain way. That's how we get into the trouble we have in so many Western nations today, because the politicians go against the best interests of the people they're supposed to be representing. So absolutely not, period. That one's, yeah, big no for me.
Always a bit of intellectual challenge. Perhaps you already arrive at the exam with thoughts,
history be written in public spaces
relating to some of these arguments. How will historians study the internet age? Or, number 14, write the history of a colour. Since I'm not too well versed in the more political questions or ones from other areas of the humanities, I'll point out some of the more sciencey questions, because at least they are ones that I have considered before. Number 21, is the Turing test a reasonable criterion for the achievement of general AI? And keep in mind, this isn't really an exam for the scientists and mathematicians, unless you also happen to be an expert in one of the humanities subjects. So answering these questions will have to come from quite a philosophical and general point of view, rather than just presenting some scientific information. This question here sort of surprised me. Should we bring back woolly mammoths from the dead?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Should we bring back woolly mammoths from the dead? I don't think so. You know, I'd have to think about that quite a bit, but I generally don't like the idea of all this genetic manipulation. I kind of believe that what's in the past should be left in the past, and we should just look forward, and we should improve things instead of bringing back the past, if you understand what I'm saying. And yeah, at first glance, I don't think so. I'd have to think about it a little bit more.
Because that is a question that I've seen on essays all the way back to high school biology.
What's wrong with the Oscars?
So
Don't start. Don't get me started.
A
lot's wrong with the Oscars.
And nuanced answer here. We have here a quote from Carl Sagan. "We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology. Does this matter?" And that seems like rather a nice question, because instead of just complaining that people don't know enough about science, you're actually having to discuss why you think they should, or perhaps why they shouldn't have to. Would it matter if newspapers...
Well, what are you doing? Are you saying that we need to force people to learn something they're not interested in learning just to participate in society? So I disagree with that. You know, it's like... everybody uses electricity, but how many people out there, truthfully, how many people out there actually know exactly how electricity works? I mean, some of us do, but there's plenty of people. I'd go out to say probably 80+% of the people out there don't really understand exactly how electricity works, yet they still use it. And they don't necessarily need to know exactly how electricity works in order to use it. And I don't think they should be forced to learn how it works, but sure, it would be beneficial for them to. But again, we have limited space in our brains, and so we really need to be focused on learning the things that we're interested in instead of things that society dictates that we should learn or that we feel would be the best for everyone. I think that we all should be able to choose what we want to, you know, spend our time learning, because our time is limited, and the space in our brains to actually remember things is limited. So that's an interesting question. I'd have to think about it a little more, but you know, at first I would say I don't really think it matters that much, to be honest.
Cease to be printed. Are streaming services good for music? And which concept is more fundamental, shape or color? Is artificial intelligence already beyond our control? And I'll be paging John Green to answer, is the Anthropocene a useful concept? We then have, should beauty be taxed? Should ugliness be compensated?
What? Okay, like some of these questions definitely make a lot of sense to me, and they would take me quite a while to really contemplate, to truly give my best answer. But some of these are just like, no, should beauty be taxed? Well, like, okay, so are we talking about beauty as in beauty in a person, like a person is beautiful, they're physically attractive? Should we be talking about beauty in the fact of, like, you know, some people's personalities are beautiful, you know, or are we talking about a piece of music, a piece of art, nature itself, a building? You know, there's so many different things that can be called beautiful or ugly, right? And honestly, no, beauty should not be taxed. And I also don't believe ugliness should be complicated. Obviously, they're talking, when they talk about ugliness being compensated, they're talking about a person, I guess. I don't know, though, if they're talking about the physical appearance of the person or the emotional traits or the personality traits of that person. I would say that, no, you should not be taxed because you're beautiful, and you should not be compensated because you're ugly. That's just, I don't quite understand why there would be any other answer to that, honestly. But you know what? I'm sure there's going to be people that would come up with a completely different answer for that. But I'd be interested to see someone coming from the other point of view, why beauty should be taxed and why ugliness should be compensated. I can't imagine any other, you know, scenario where that makes sense, honestly.
Think about whether you could really write an entire essay about is ignorance bliss or defend tweeting. Are there too many books? This one probably I've thought about the most. It's just sitting in a library and looking at all the ones on the shelf.
This one right here is interesting to me because it's ignorant bliss. I think in some ways it is. When you don't know anything, when you're just kind of going through life dumb, you have no worries. You know, like when you are not worried about anything around you, you're not paying attention to what's good, what's bad. You're just living your life, man. Imagine someone that's just sitting on a hammock and they hear nothing and they see nothing. They're just relaxing in the breeze. I mean, that's bliss, man. Of course it is. But would you truly want to live in that sort of bliss? I wouldn't. It would be so boring. Even though I think it would be bliss, it would be a boring bliss. And who would want that?
Of that hardly ever get read, and thinking about the prospect that every day more books are being published. But I'm sure there's a way to argue that we benefit from new and updated knowledge all the time, and if we just kept all the books that we already have, that wouldn't be great either. One for the gamers in the house, we have, would you rather be a vampire or a zombie? Is it possible to imagine a society without law?
A 100% a vampire. A zombie has basically, they have no control over what they do. A vampire is intelligent and a vampire has control over what they do, except, you know, technically they have to drink blood. I mean, obviously, but outside of that, they can do things. They can make choices and decisions in life. A zombie just has no control at all. You know, it's basically they're fully controlled by the limbic part of the brain. That's it.
And then a nice one here, number 17. Does it matter if we are alone in the universe? So does it matter if we are alone in the universe? Well, maybe it does, because the question itself sort of frames
No, I don't think so. I don't think it matters at all. It doesn't change anything.
Number 24.
We're already alone. We don't know anything about it. So
even try to understand how the brain works.
Yeah, I think so.
I thought that seems like an obvious answer that we should. But perhaps trying to think of ways to answer this and present arguments why we shouldn't would actually be a really interesting conversation. Then, as a fitting final question on this paper, number 25 asked, are there any unanswerable questions?
Wow, that's a good question.
Before we take a look at some of the other papers, let's take a look at the assessment criteria for these essays. One is the engagement, including the range of issues addressed, the depth and sophistication of comprehension, and directness of answering the question. You also need to present a coherent argument that has clarity and power, is intellectual and original. You need to provide information, such as knowledge of the original sources, range, depth and detail of evidence cited, and accuracy of your information. It should be organized and presented well with clarity and coherence, correct grammar, spelling and punctuation, and whoever's reading your answer has to be able to see in you potential for future intellectual development. There's also an interesting note here about a dress code for the exam. Men are expected to wear a suit, tie and gown, and women should wear equivalent attire. I'm not sure if this is normal for all exams at Oxford, but that sounds like one of the fanciest looking exams that I've heard of. If you do well in the exam, you might be shortlisted and invited back to answer questions about the answers you wrote. And this will be in front of all the fellows that are in the school. So there might be up to 80 people watching you answer those questions.
Oh, wow.
You can take a little look at the philosophy questions, but I'm guessing they're going to be pretty difficult. Here we go. Number 5. A person is a person through a person. Discuss. Or can we talk or think about everything that exists? On the next page we have, could rocks be conscious? There was one other category of questions that has since been discontinued.
Whoa. Wow. There's that many subjects? Man, I didn't know there was that many. Wow.
And those were essays where only one word was given as a prompt. So water, Originality, novelty, miracles,
Oh.
those are all previous questions.
Oh,
It
wow.
certainly
Okay.
is a very fascinating exam, and even if you have no intention of ever sitting it yourself, at least some of these questions would make for interesting topics of discussion or debate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully not too heated, though.
Wow. Guys, what makes an exam hard? I think this could be the world's hardest exam because there is no correct answer. You know, it's like exams that have correct answers are much easier because you just have to study for the answer itself to a question. You just have to know the subject. These are completely different because you have to really think deeply for a very good answer to each of these questions. And these are some really, really tough questions. I mean, even the ones that I answered here that were relatively simple on the surface. Does religion have to be old, for example? I mean, if, you know, I have my answer, right? But in the big scheme of things, you know, people could come from different sides of this and give just as good of an answer of why a religion doesn't or does have to be old. You know, I mean, they can. It's just really interesting. This is. I would love to take this exam just for fun. I actually might go and look this up and actually just, you know, read that. I agree with her. These are fun prompts just to have a conversation with people on. You know, I love this type of thing. It's just, I just enjoy, you know, these interesting questions that'll make you think more deeply than just your surface level questions. And these definitely did the trick there. You know, I really enjoyed these up until we got to the English. I was always a good writer, but I was never into like fiction books. I just never enjoyed fiction. I love reading nonfiction. My wife, she loves fiction. She goes through so many books. I can't even begin to tell you how many books she goes through a month, but I've just never been into fiction. I never could get into it. It's just, my shelf is full of nonfiction books on all sorts of interesting topics, but when it comes to fiction books, I'm just not into it. I just can't, like, you know, romance and all this. Well, I don't think many men would be into romance novels, but you get what I'm saying? Like, just all the fiction is just not my thing. I love what's more real, you know. I don't know. I can't explain that, but we each love what we love, and that's me. But anyways, guys, I thought this was very interesting, and I'd be curious. Do you think this is the world's hardest exam? Do you have any examples of an exam that might be harder than this, considering how open-ended this exam is, basically? I'd love to hear what you think about this. And have you had any, or do you know anybody who's had any experience with this particular exam? I'd love to know how it went. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow me on my journey to discover my British and Irish ancestry. Until next time, guys, peace.